out here at Greenwood Cemetery this afternoon, and I'm at the gravesite of my in-laws, Bill and Gay Pittman. And next to Bill and Gay's grave, of course, is a plot for Suzanne and myself. And you might think it's kind of strange for me to be standing out here at the gravesite like this, and even strange to be thinking about my own gravesite one day. It reminds me of the story from the original version of True Grit, with John Wayne playing the part of Rooster Cogburn and Mattie Ross, who was wanting John Wayne to catch the fella who killed her daddy. And near the end of the movie, of course, John Wayne has rescued her. He's done with all the bad guys, taking care of them, and he's back at Mattie's home place, and she takes him up to the little family cemetery there and shows him around, and finally shows him where her grave is going to be. And then says, "Rooster, I want you to be buried next to me." And he kind of thinks that's curious and wondering about it. Then she offers this explanation. She says, "I think it's comforting to know where one will meet eternity, don't you?" And he just kind of gave a gruff and a snuff, and he didn't say a whole lot about it. But truth is, of course, when it comes to the idea of consolation and being comforting, our Lord Jesus spoke his last word in the 7 last words of the cross from that perspective. He spoke that word that has to do with our final consolation. As we look at Luke chapter 23, verses 44 through 46, in the 7th and the final saying of Christ from the cross, we come to the word of final consolation there. It says, "It was about noon now, and darkness had come over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon, for the sun had stopped shining. And the veil of the temple was torn in two. And Jesus called out with a loud voice, 'Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.' And when he had said this, he breathed his last." Verse 45 tells us that the veil of the temple was torn in two. Interesting comment, because the Mishnah, which was one of the Jewish writings, told that the veil, or the curtain that separated the inner temple from the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place of all, the place where the Ark of the Covenant was to be found, the veil, the curtain there, was the thickness of 1 handbreadth. Now I want you to think about that for a moment. The thickness of 1 handbreadth, about 3.5 or a bit better, maybe 3 3/4 inches wide. And that tearing of a curtain that was that thick was a divine sign, one designed to show the finished work of Christ on the cross, and of course one to also show that the temple had now become obsolete because Christ once for all sacrifice had been made. That's an amazing thought if you think about it for a moment. Christ once for all sacrifice had been made, and so the way into the Holy of Holies had been made by way of his death, and now no longer do we need a temple in order to work between ourselves and God, but that Jesus Christ is our mediator for that. And of course, it's no coincidence that in less than 40 years from when the veil of the temple was torn, the temple would be destroyed by the Romans, never to be built back again. Think about that. In 2,000 years, that Jewish temple has never been built back. With the death of Christ, the work of forgiveness was complete. But salvation is more, of course, than just forgiveness. Salvation is also the hope of everlasting life. Every one of the gospel accounts carries the resurrection story of Jesus Christ. And there's an article in Leadership magazine from several years ago that tells the special story of a little 8-year-old boy named Philip. Philip had Down syndrome. 3rd grade boy, 8 years old, in his Sunday school class with the rest of the 3rd graders. Would have had a more difficult time with them, except he had an excellent Sunday school teacher, and we always appreciate our Sunday school teachers. Had an excellent Sunday school teacher who made him a part of the class and worked with the class to make him much more accepted than he would have been, although he was not fully accepted, of course. The Sunday after Easter, the teacher brought the Legs pantyhose containers, the ones that look like eggs, and she brought them to class, and multitudes of them, and told the children that each of them were to go outside and they were to find some kind of symbol, some kind of something that reminded them of new life. And the kids, of course, all went out the door in wild confusion. The students returned to the classroom, each of them excited about their egg, and she would open them one at a time, and the children would see what the others had brought, whether a leaf or perhaps a butterfly or some other sign of new life. And as they opened the eggs, they were each saying ooh and ah over what was being shown. But then, of course, she opened another one, and it revealed nothing inside. And the children explained, that's stupid, that's not fair. Somebody did not do their assignment. And Philip said, that's mine. And they said, Philip, you're always doing things wrong. Why don't you do them right? He said, I didn't do it wrong. The egg is empty because the tomb was empty too. Jesus rose from the dead. They say that from that moment on, that Sunday school class accepted Philip wholeheartedly. And it was only a few months later that Philip ended up dying from a disease problem that most children would have easily shrugged off. And at the funeral service held at the church for Philip, the teacher and the children in his Sunday school class came forward and laid on the communion table empty legs Easter egg containers to symbolize that Philip, because of his hope in the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, was now with him forevermore. Dear friend, this week we've been talking about the death of Christ, but tomorrow on Easter Sunday is the most exciting day of the Christian year. It's the day on which we celebrate the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ from the dead, so that every graveyard now is only a temporary place. My in-laws have only fallen asleep. One day they'll be awakened by a great trumpet sound, and they'll rise to be with Christ forevermore. Keep that thought in your heart as we are so excited about tomorrow morning on Easter Sunday.